I'm with Ari Sussman of Collective Mining. CNL is the symbol on the NYSE and the TSX. Collective Mining is one of the major bright stars of 2025 in the gold exploration, the junior mining sector. It seems like this company puts out a banger news release at least once a month, and they have not disappointed in recent months. So I'm going to get into the ramp zone, the high grade subzone at Apollo, and then this new discovery at San Antonio with Ari. Good morning, Ari. How are you?
I'm excellent. How are you?
I'm great. Despite the gold price dropping on Monday, I think generally we're holding up pretty well here. And actually, I'm somewhat pleased to see gold holding above 3,200. Despite all these news catalysts that might have otherwise sent it lower. I don't think it's a bad gold price at 3,250, quite frankly.
It's reminding me, this market, of similar times in the early 2000s where we hit the sell in May and go away point. The gold price chops lower, but the equities kind of go sideways with maybe a very slight down bias until mid-August, and then roar higher into year. And it's starting to feel like that. There's just the volumes kind of drying up as expected, and we're going into summer, and gold had a huge run, and it needs to consolidate its gains. But I think the exciting thing is the equities, although they're up, they really haven't outperformed. And so I suspect they're not going to perform poorly over the summer. In fact, I think discoveries will explode higher, even with the gold price. I don't know, maybe it corrects to 3,000, 3,100, something like that, as it chops its way and allows people to reset and start to load in again. But it's been a pretty sharp week. I mean, we're now set up for Trump good news versus Trump bad news, it feels like. And good news items are spiking the general indexes higher, and gold is the reciprocal on the sell-off. But I don't think that's the trend going forward. That's just a short-term correction of existing trends.
Yeah, what about this idea, a concept that maybe the juniors actually start to outperform a little bit? So even if there's a consolidation or even a little bit of further downside in the major gold mining stocks, what if, as long as gold holds above 3,000 throughout the summer, the explorers, the juniors can actually do reasonably well, and it won't just be a sell in May and go away sort of thing? Because, as you said, the juniors haven't really moved yet, so maybe this is their time to shine as the news flow picks up across the sector.
Well, I believe you highlighted the TSX-Venture looks to have broken out of a pattern to the upside. So yes, I agree. And I've seen that happen in the past, in the old days, many summers, right? So I do think we're going into that kind of a market. It'll be only the first move for the juniors, right? So I don't think it's going to be this insanely explosive move. But, again, if you drill a nice hole with an early stage project, your stock is now going to respond very favorably, right? And we're seeing that. 2 years ago, it didn't seem to matter. We almost drill what we were drilling, at Collective, like over the moon style holes to garner any attention, because there's such little capital. Now it's starting to broaden out. And so discoveries are going to go higher. There's no question of that. And speculation is going to pick up and, jump from name to name. And, it's a good time. One point to mention, is, this past quarter, it's not even done, but the earnings that are being reported by gold producers. Okay, this is the first quarter really where we're seeing the market decide to move higher ones that beat and punish those that miss, instead of them all being lumped into one category where it doesn't seem to matter. So this is exciting. And I will, for your listeners, highlight one final point. Kind of the average gold price, for the earnings that are being reported for Q1 was like 2,750 to 2,800. It wasn't 3,000 or 3,200. So, we're trading hundreds of dollars higher, in an environment where so far all companies, with the exception of Barrick and Newmont, seem to have their costs under control to possibly trending lower, right? I mean, we saw some unbelievable numbers come out, Endeavor Mining, I'm sure, 400 some odd million in free cash flow in the quarter, 2,700, I think it was 80 gold. There's been more, and there's been about 10 of them like that, right? Agnico Eagle, our largest, our large shareholder, had an unbelievable quarter, cost very under control, 1,100 and something dollars all in sustaining costs. I mean, those margins are bigger than the best high flying tech stocks right now. Right? So it's a good time to be in this business.
Yeah, that's a good point to make. So even with Newmont, I think their average realized selling price in Q1 was around 2,900. So even with them probably achieving the highest price of any of the senior gold miners, they're still, that's $350 less than today's current price. So really all the gold price needs to do is tread water and maybe just even not fall back below 3,000. And I think that the sector is poised to do well. But yeah, I think that's well taken, that, new discoveries are going to work well this summer. There's a lot of companies with drill programs going on. And, you guys are one of them. Let's sort of go in order here, starting back in March, because I think the last time we spoke was probably January or February. So let's start talking about the ramp zone and that news release you put out in March. That was really stellar. I think it was like something like 75 meters of 8 grams. What's happening at ramp, and what are some of the things that you've learned in 2025 there?
So let me tell you what we've learned and what we hope will happen, because we're all speculators. So this story really relates to Aris Mining's Marmato mine. Okay, and so for those that don't know, they should know, but our Guayabales project and the Apollo discovery is contiguous to the multi-million ounce Marmato mine, which is currently a small producing mine of about 20,000 ounces a year, but is in full-blown construction to become a 200,000 ounce per annum mine starting sometime late next year. And when you look at Marmato, okay, it is 2 deposits. The upper Marmato, which is a pretty ordinary sheeted veinlet system. That's where they produce the 20,000 ounces of gold per annum from currently. And then they discovered what they call Marmato Deeps. Marmato Deeps is a reduced intrusion related gold system. If you took the core, the drill core from Marmato Deeps and dumped it into, say, Snowline's core shed, you might be, unless you're an expert, you'd be hard pressed to tell the difference, right? So they're very similar. So what does that mean? What does this fancy word, reduced intrusion related gold system, mean? It's just a lot of words to say a porphyry that the base metal portion didn't precipitate upwards in the metal content for one reason or another, and there can be different reasons. But these reduction minerals are associated with it. So Snowline, Marmato Deeps have minor bismuth tellurium associated with gold. Well, guess what? We found a ramp zone. We think we found the equivalent of the top of Marmato Deeps, with one big difference. Our grade, at least from early drilling, is much higher grade, right? And the reasons for that, are really 2 main reasons. One, the host rock. We're in a porous breccia, so there's more space for the metal to get trapped, versus Marmato Deeps, which is in a porphyry diorite. It's tighter. Okay, but secondly, our late stage sheeted veinlet system, much like what Marmato has at Upper Marmato, we have it right from the top of Apollo, and it's continuing to overprint ramps. So think of it as getting 2 douses of metal, in the same location. And so that's giving us intercepts like 75 meters at 8 grams. And that is remarkably continuous if you were to look at that meter by meter. And I think on 2 occasions we published the individual assays, in the appendix of the press release. So no one would think we were, smearing a meter at 1,000 grams or something like that and blending it down. No, this is continuous. Now, what is the hope? So Marmato Deeps is around 350 meters across by 750 meters vertical and open. Okay, well, what if we find those dimensions, but at better grade? Marmato Deeps is 6.2 million ounces. So obviously we'd be more than that. And that's in addition to, we don't have a resource estimate yet, but a multi-million ounce potential system in the upper 1,000 meters at Apollo. So this is why people are excited, because if it comes together, you know, you can start to pretty quickly wrap your head around just Apollo eventually growing north of 10 million ounces on a gold equivalent basis.
It's very interesting. So, you know, my skeptic hat comes on when I see a company put out such great results on such a regular basis. So, what are some of the things that might go wrong at Ramp? The first thing that comes to my mind is you're going to have to drill really deep here to extend this further. Is there any way you can get at this from a lower, like a, lower, setting, or maybe, yeah, I don't know. It looks like you're going to have to drill a 1,500-meter hole here.
Well, you're correct. That is the challenge. Okay, so we have two big rigs with our higher capacity drill rigs on their way to site right now. The first one is expected to arrive in the second half of June, and the second one in the first half of July. Okay, and so those rigs have deep capacity. But you are right, it's not going to be initially fast to do that, to get these 1,500-meter holes, but we're using directional drilling. Okay, so the bottleneck is drilling what they call the mother hole, right? The one that will go down in waste rock, most likely for, I don't know, 1,000 meters, whatever our team plans. And then once you start curving, right, directing the hole, you keep leaving from the bottom kickoff point. So all of a sudden drill holes become shorter and quicker to get to the zone. Ideally, we'd like to get there underground. That is the best scenario. And if you've looked at our thinking on a development plan for this project, there will be a main haulage tunnel. We called it ramp because it will intersect at this haulage tunnel, the ramp zone. And it would take us from where we think the mill will be here. When we develop into Apollo, we'll be 1,000 meters or about 3,000 feet below the top of Apollo. And so we'll be right in the zone. I wish we could blink our eyes and put that development in today and just have it ready. We'd be drilling underground. This would be a cinch, but we can't. So we have to work with what we have. We are looking at other creative ways to get at least not that deep, but deeper in the system with some underground development. And there are some opportunities in the relative short term, but we're looking at it. It is a challenge, but man, I see all kinds of companies drilling very deep. ATEX comes to mind in Chile. I mean, they're drilling, north of 2 kilometer or 2,000 meter long holes on a consistent basis now, right? Filo was constantly drilling 1,500 meter holes before they got taken out, right? And so it's not that hard. It's just a little bit time consuming. But you're right. I wish it was shallower.
So how many rigs are currently at the Apollo/ramp zones?
There are 6 rigs currently turning. We're going up to 11 rigs portfolio wide.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
by this June, July timeframe, we'll be up to 11. Okay, so we're drilling Apollo right now. We will talk about San Antonio, but 2 rigs are going to be turning there imminently. We have 1 rig drilling what's called the ME target. Okay, and we will be drilling very shortly after ME the knife target, which has never really been discussed. It's a shot, and something called the X target, which was aptly named X because we couldn't come up with a name for it. So I said, just put a letter X as a placeholder, and then it stuck.
So this is very interesting because for most junior mining companies, discovery like Apollo/ramp would be a company maker by itself. And I've done some back of the napkin math. I won't share the numbers, but it's in the millions of ounces gold equivalent, based upon the drilling that you've done to date. I'm sure you've done your own math, but you continue to step out and drill wildcat targets, continue to explore your property package. What's your thinking and how long the company will keep testing new targets across the property package?
It's a good question. It's one we debate internally all the time. But look, I believe, and not our team believes, that we're on to a very rare opportunity, which we believe will ultimately evolve into a metal-bearing camp. Okay, and that includes Marmato. Remember, Marmato is almost 9 million ounces of 43-101 qualified resources. And we're beside it with a series of targets, including Apollo, which you're right, it's going to be multi-million ounces. You want to push the envelope on something like this as far as you can before you pin yourself to one idea, okay? Because what does development look like here, right? And so because we might find more over the next year, we don't need to make a development decision. We need to see if we do, because that might change our thinking on how one attacks this project, right? It would be easy to say we have Apollo ramp, which is one system below it, you know, and let's just go do that and let's forget about everything else, because why are we doing this? But it's not that often this happens. And why is this happening? Because there's multiple fluid pulses dumping metal, different deposits overprinting each other. So that's the ingredient for a camp to. And so I think we got to push hard, and there's a lot more value to come here. Let's hit these things, right? We're not gonna make a discovery every time we drill, of course, but it's rare you feel like you have this chance that you will make another bona fide discovery this year, and I think we have a real chance at that.
It's really interesting. The Guayabales and San Antonio projects are located on opposite sides of a highway with power lines and hydropower in close proximity. It's absolutely remarkable that this exists, like this setting exists, where you have these deposits that are so well endowed next to infrastructure, not too far from a town of 35,000 people. It's like God really favored you in this area, Ari.
Well, it's called thinking about things when you look for projects more than geology, right? When we put this company together, we had 5 areas of Colombia that we liked geologically, right? And the other 4 are still going to be our secret, because maybe in the future we will do them, right? But this was the one that had these extra bonuses going for it, right? It had a pro-mining society. It's right next to Marmato, which I think we've talked about is the second longest continuously producing gold mine in the Americas in north of 500 years, right? So it's pro-mining. It's got all this excellent infrastructure. As you said, we're right on hydropower lines, like high and with lots of capacity. This is the Pan Am Highway, the Pan American Highway that we're abutting. So it's not even just a random highway, it's the Pan American. And you mentioned the town of Supia, 35,000 people, but we actually have something like within 7 square miles, give or take, we've got 50,000 people. And within a 2-hour drive, we have 7 million people. Okay. Medellin, you know, being 2 hours away at just over 5 million, and then 2 other million-person cities around the same distance away. So you've got everything going for you here to make this successful. You know, you mentioned our San Antonio project. It is literally beside Guayabales, separated by the highway. Okay, and you know, why are we exploring that? Because if we do make a porphyry discovery there, it would benefit from the infrastructure that will be invested for the Guayabales project for a mine. And so it makes a lot of sense. Like porphyry exploration, as you know, is very difficult, right? I mean, it's difficult because most of the porphyries that are being found are in terrible locations, right? They're super high in elevation. They have no roads, no power, right? No labor force. And here you have it all. And one of the key things, I don't know if the San Antonio project, if we do discover a porphyry, which is our hope this year, I don't know if we'll find something that would come to surface or not. It might be underground, but I'm enthused to move forward in an underground scenario, because right next door, you'll have a starter mine at the Guayabales project that can be used in theory to pay for a giant underground block cave, right, sitting right beside the highway. So this makes a lot of sense, right, to push the envelope and explore for a porphyry, next door. If this was in the middle of nowhere, I would say stop. I wouldn't drill another hole right now into the porphyry target at San Antonio.
Yeah, your point is well taken, because I mean, the company is at about $1 billion market cap right now. So you're marketing, you're prepping this for a major mining company. There's only one type of buyer here, and there might be 10 or 12 of these companies in the entire world who could take you out at a premium valuation and then build this into a world-class gold and silver camp with some base metals attached to it. And so they want a 30, 40, 50-year mine life, and they want to have the visibility to that. So it does absolutely make sense to make a new porphyry discovery. So yeah, let's talk about the San Antonio project, because we talked about this last time, and you were kind of like, we'll see, we like our targets, but we'll see, it all depends upon the assay. So you put out this result from San Antonio, 290 meters grading 0.58 grams per ton gold, 0.17% copper, 3 grams silver, and 70 ppm moly. So that's a porphyry intercept if I've ever seen one. What did you drill into, and what's next?
Okay, so let me give some background just so we understand this. Okay, so when we put the company together in 2020 as a private company, Guayabales had multiple negotiations to consolidate the mineral licenses, okay, and then it had to get titled. But San Antonio came in, and it was already a mineral title. It was one vendor. It was actually at some point previously in a junior that had drilled one hole into it and walked away, and so it was walk-up drill ready. And we went and explored it while we were working on the titling and consolidation of Guayabales, and we drilled 2 targets. Okay, one's named Dollar, which is no longer a target. We put most of our holes into that. We discovered the bottom of a porphyry system, and for those that don't understand what that means, when you get to the bottom of a porphyry system, your grade's gone. So it's full of quartz veins. It was very impressive looking porphyry core, but the sulfides are gone. They were eroded off into space above it, at some point in our history. And at the end of that program, we drilled 2 wildcat holes into a target named Pound. Okay, and they were from one pad. We drilled one steep, one shallow. And I don't remember the exact assays, but we cut in both the holes something like 700 meters at in and around a 0.5 gram gold equivalent. So neither are economic. Both started at surface, both bottomed in mineralization. And just to understand why we didn't follow that up, remember 2021, when we got those assays, it was COVID. It was like from when we finished drilling till we got those assay results, I think it was something like 6 or 7 months, because remember all these delays everybody had during COVID. And during that multi-month waiting period, we put together Guayabales, we got it fully titled, and then we started drilling and made a discovery. So we never looked back at San Antonio. Second half of last year, we went back and took, with fresh eyes and a lot more knowledge in the area, went back and took a good look at it, and then sent our greenfields team out to go and explore. And when looking at those 2 holes that we had drilled, what did we drill? We drilled what they call the pyrite halo of a porphyry system. For those that don't understand that, you can find these zones of very high levels of pyrite. We saw up to 5%. That's not what we normally find in the middle of a porphyry. And in this instance, it carries gold. Nodes can occur on the side, above, or just off of a porphyry. And it's not uncommon. You pretty much find them in all porphyries. But ours had quite a bit of gold. And so we did a lot of surface work at Pound and generated other targets named Real, Cop, and Euro. But let's stick to Pound. And we said, okay, we have a coincidental copper and gold and soil anomaly now. Let's go drill. We drilled 2 holes. Okay, first one was from the south. The hole was SAC 10. We were too far south. Now that we knew it when we drilled it because we saw the core, but we cut out, I forget, 300 or 400 meters of basically nothing, and then went into this pyrite halo and started to see some copper near the end. So we said, okay, second hole, let's move the pad closer to the end of the SAC 10 hole because we were too far away, and go steeper. And so to answer, my long way to answer your question is this. We found smoke, not fire. What we hit was we drilled the country rock, which is a metagabbro, okay? But the metagabbro is being intruded by an early phase porphyry unit. So that's where that metal comes from. Okay, we have an individual working with us named Dick Tostel, okay, who in my mind is one of, if not the best porphyry expert on the planet. Before we had assays, he was down at site. I was there too, and we looked at the core, and he said, "Guys, I don't know if we'll have a big body intact. Lots of things can happen, go wrong in porphyry exploration, but you're kind of within 500 to 750 feet somewhere of the source of that fluid we need to drill." So we said, okay, let's get the assays, understand what we have. We got them, we published them, and 2 rigs are going to be turning there, I think, for the rest of the year. The first rig actually literally started coring this morning. I saw the drilling report. It did its first 5 meters, so nothing yet. And obviously the second rig will be there maybe by late next week. And we are going to poke around. And for those that are interested in porphyry exploration, I know you're wearing a Hercules Metals hat, so you obviously know quite a bit about porphyry. You need to miss to hit. And what people don't understand about porphyries are the aspect ratio of them are about 3 to 4 times vertically longer than they are in width or across. So they're hard to find, but once you find them, they're simple to drill, right? The challenge is getting to them, and it usually takes about a bunch of holes of misses in order to zero in on it. Let's hope we find it.
Yeah, you're right. You need to drill a bunch of holes to vector into the core of the system. You need to use the zonation and the geochemistry to help you vector into the core of it. So when I saw these 2 holes you reported, holes 10 and 11, what really I found to be notable is that the moly grades are increasing down hole in both of these, particularly in hole 11, where you get the ppm up to about 100 moly, about 650 meters down hole. And that's also where the copper grades go up. So that's a pretty big clue that you're getting warmer. But like Tosdal said, you're not in it yet. So you got some clues that you might be within 500, 300 meters. You don't know, but now you need to step out. So the 2 rigs that are going to test this further, are they stepping to the north or to the south?
So the first rig, which actually just started coring, is going back to the same pad that we drilled this SAC 11 hole that you alluded to from, but instead of drilling in a northerly direction, it's going in a southeast direction. So totally different direction where we have no drilling. So that's our hope that we're going to hit that. The second rig is going to be moving southwest of the current rig that just started. So that's going to be going actually back to the drill pad where we drilled SAC 10, but instead of drilling to the north, we're going to be drilling steep to the south. Okay, we do think it's somewhere south and east of where we have drilled. We could be wrong, but that's what we think. But you raised a very good point. Your observation is excellent, right? So what's potentially very exciting about this porphyry is, first of all, there's a lot of gold associated with the copper, and the correlation in most porphyries, right? It's consistent. As one of the grades goes up, it tends to, most of the time, the other grade kind of follows it in some ratio, right? But normally, we see we're more used to porphyries of 0.5% copper and maybe 0.3 gold or 0.2 gold. In this instance, there's a lot of gold, and if you looked at the individual assays, they spike together. So if the ratio holds and we find the source or the center of it, right, I suspect that if we drill 0.5% copper, we're going to see something like 1.5 grams gold or somewhere in that. So very high grade.
Yeah, I mean, 0.84 grams per ton gold equivalent in the country rock. So you're not even
Right.
in the ballpark yet. Like you're still vectoring towards the ballpark, and definitely not at home plate yet. So that is pretty interesting. So I'm very intrigued to see how those rigs do in further drilling at San Antonio. So let's talk big picture here, Ari. So obviously the company is very well funded now. I think you have over 70 million cash in the bank. You've got 7, 8 rigs turning across the property package. How many people are you currently employing in country?
About 125.
Wow.
Okay, and then 5 outside.
And what kind of cash burn rate is that at this point in time with all those rigs turning?
So the budget for the year is going to, for the calendar year, which includes what we already burned, is going to be in the neighborhood of 40 million. Okay, so it's already mid-May, right? So we're strongly funded. I suspect, I don't know, that we'll be funded for next year too, potentially, but obviously we're not going to let the treasury go down to nothing by the end of next year. So we'll be raising money next year again, like every company that's in the cash burn phase. So we're fortunate, as you know, Agnico Eagle stepped up a couple of months ago and went from 9.9 to 14.9% interest and gave us a nice infusion of cash, which was good. And so we got a nice shareholder there. They're very supportive and technically strong, as you know. And so we're fortunate to be in this position. But this is about being as aggressive as possible because money is now starting to flow for this space, right? Companies can raise money right now, right? 14 months ago, okay, March of 2024. Okay, we needed money. I rarely am in a position where where we need money. We needed money, and when we sat down and evaluated what was the best method to get money, we decided on a strategic investment from Agnico. This is how bearish the market was at that time, because I knew that if we hired whichever bank to do a brokered financing, that just on the announcement, irrespective of the amount, the stock would have been down 25%, would have been crushed. Right, that is what was happening in March of 2024 to anyone that tried to raise money. So we brought the strategic investor Agnico Eagle in. They did it at a premium to the market, and we eliminated that potential downside scenario and put a floor under the stock. And it's been market turns quickly. We see this, right? This is awesome. I mean, bull market started kind of in the summer for the non-producers, and we moved relatively early because we're more advanced, as did some of our advanced peers, and now it's trickling down. It's awesome.
Yeah, it has been quite a change in sentiment, and we're seeing more mergers and acquisitions across the sector, including just Monday morning with Pan American going for Mag Silver. The first rule of confidentiality agreements is you don't talk about confidentiality agreements, but I'm just interested in how many senior mining companies have approached you in 2025, and are you hosting site visits and tours with bank analysts?
So I'm not going to say how many, but yes, obviously there's some interest, right? And we are an open company, and at the end of the day, we will do whatever is best for shareholders, of which I'm one of the largest. So, if that's sell or build, I don't know. Right now, if someone was to put a gun to my head and say make a choice, okay, today, based on all the variables today, 100% every junior should sell. The cost of capital right now is too high to borrow, right? It was very different from when I had Continental Gold and interest rates were zero negative globally, right? The cost of capital was low. It's not low, it's expensive now. So I think everyone should be a seller. Maybe in a year that maybe we should all be builders. There are points in the cycle where that can happen. Do you remember a company called Tahoe Resources? They found,
Vaguely,
yeah.
yeah.
They found, what is the name of the mine that Pan American owns? Is it Escobal in Guatemala?
It's in Mexico. Oh yeah, in Guatemala. Yeah.
Right. Incredible deposit. So this was, it's worth looking up. Maybe we should write an article on it. So I forget the year. It might have been 06, 07. So they caught the cycle perfectly in timing with that project. And they went to go raise the CapEx. And things were hot. And they raised 100% of it in equity. They had no debt. And they were right, and they built the mine. Unfortunately, it ran into huge social problems and has been halted. They got taken out, by Pan American, and it had its problems ever since. But that is an instance where if you could do that at the right valuation, you should build. Right? That's far better than selling, right? I mean, if the mine works, obviously, right? But that doesn't happen very often. That's those few and far between. That's instead of going to the Orions or the Sprots and these companies that should all be renamed break your kneecap financing companies, right? That's not ideal. But generally, that's what we need to do in order to build. Those are high, that's very, very high cost money.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's absolutely right. Um, what keeps you up at night? I mean, the company has had an incredible run. The results that you keep putting out on basically a monthly basis are stellar. Yeah, what keeps you up at night?
So, so what keeps me up at night is the same thing that's always kept me up at night. Colombia is a wonderful, stable country to invest in. It's got rule of law. Mining is part of the law. This is a key metric of when one should invest in a country. It has a lot of people, Colombia, right? Over 50 million people population and not a huge landmass. And so we have people near the project. And fortunately, we're next to Marmato, so we walked into a scenario with a social license already there. Our goal has been and will continue to be to improve that social license, but most importantly, not lose it. That is what keeps me up at night. Okay, because we can control that, and we have to be diligent and vigilant to ensure that we maintain that social license, because Colombia is going to evolve into a country like Peru with respect to mining. You're going to win or fail based on your ability to gain support or not at the municipal level for projects. So that's what keeps me up at night, and that's what I think about the most. The geology, obviously, I like. We love it. We're fortunate. We can't control it, right? So it doesn't keep me up at night because it is what it is, and we just got to be smart about filling it.
Social license is critical, like everywhere in the world. Some places a little more than others, and I would say in Latin America, it's paramount based upon my experience. Does the company have a social manager, somebody on the ground who manages the local affairs?
Oh yeah, we have a vice president of sustainability named Rodolfo Higuera. He's a superstar. I mean, we've got a big team, and our entire team is boots on the ground. There's no office job.
Hmm.
Right? That's a fatal flaw we've seen in many of these companies, right? So we've got this wonderful team that are integrated into the communities. We have many great initiatives, some of which we're the only mining company to partner with the Colombian Coffee Federation, right? We're in the coffee quadrangle. So this is the heart of coffee country where we are. And so it's important that we work with coffee to educate people on the fact that we don't encroach on coffee. They're actually complementary businesses to each other, because right now both price of gold and coffee is high, but normally they tend to be counter-cyclical, to each other based on history. So this is good. Secondly, dialogue. I mean, this is what's missed, right? How do you stop problems from happening before they happen? You will have dialogue, right? We have a dialogue platform. We funded it initially. We don't run it. It's run by a third party whose expertise is in community dialogue, and anyone can show up and talk about whatever they want. They can go there and say, we hate collective mining. They screwed this up, that's okay. But it can be about anything else in the community, and we have a lot of partners now in it. So, public utility companies, other industry, government, etc. And that's the key. And these are the two basic building blocks, for success. And always start at the local level and work outwards. The fatal mistake that's made in many countries is big companies especially come in and think that wining and dining the national government first is the right model. And that's the wrong model. Start small and build outwards.
Wise words. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Final question, Ari. What kind of news flow can we expect from CNL over the coming months? And of course, me being the Porphyry guy, I'm super excited about an update from San Antonio. When do you think we might hear more about San Antonio?
Well, San Antonio, I mean, drills just start now, so we got to get 3 or 4 holes together in a bunch to get assays. So probably September, something like that, depending on drilling productivity and variables that I know. But as far as news flow, I mean, we're going to be pounding news out every 3 weeks because in batch results, because we're going to be up to 11 rigs by the summertime. North American summertime, right? So there's going to be a lot of news flow, a lot going on. Things to look forward to in the near term. I think the next set of results we will have, we haven't seen any yet, is we started a very shallow drill program at Apollo. So in the very top, of the system, top 100, 150 meters of it. And people don't realize that we have, in addition to gold, silver, and copper in that top 150 meters, we have potential for very high grade tungsten. Okay, so we are hoping we'll be reporting some good results. We did announce tungsten a couple of years ago, but we did it with standard fire assay. Okay, and tungsten is like nickel. The better way to assay it, is with XRF assaying, not hand PXRF, but actually laboratory XRF assaying. And I don't have any assays yet, but normally, right, when with these metals that go from fire to XRF, the grade tends to actually get better when you do the proper XRF, because it's more reliable, tends to pick up more of it. So I hope that happens. But maybe we'll be getting 0.3, 0.4 tungsten percent. It's a lot, right? Remember, it trades at 3 to 4 times the price of copper.
Tungsten is a critical mineral, very important to the militaries of the world. So that will be an interesting thing to watch for over the coming weeks, and obviously more results from Apollo, Ram, and those 8 rigs that are turning. Thank you for your time, Ari.
Thank you very much. We'll talk soon.